The December rain hammered against the windshield as Vincent Copeland sat in his truck outside the mechanic shop, watching his daughter through the bay window. Lana worked under the hood of a sedan, her hands black with grease, her ponytail tucked under a baseball cap. She was 17 and already one of the best diagnostic techs in the shop. Vincent felt pride swell in his chest, the same pride that had been there since she'd changed her first tire at age 12. His phone buzzed. Another text from Nora. "Can we talk about Thanksgiving? Mom really wants us there." Vincent deleted it without responding. They'd had this conversation 6 times already. The Waltons' annual Thanksgiving spectacle wasn't just dinner. It was a performance, a display of their wealth and social standing in Greenwich. 47 guests, catered food, crystal and china. And every year, some excuse why Lana couldn't attend or shouldn't attend or would be more comfortable elsewhere. The shop door opened and Lana emerged, wiping her hands on a red rag. She spotted the truck and grinned, jogging over through the rain. Vincent unlocked the door and she climbed in, bringing the smell of motor oil and cold air. "Dad, you're early," she said. "I've still got 2 hours on my shift. Wanted to talk to you about something." Vincent handed her a thermos of hot chocolate. "Your stepmom's been pushing about Thanksgiving at the Waltons." Lana's smile faded. She unscrewed the thermos cap, steam rising in the cold truck. "You know how that goes. Tell me." She stared out at the rain. "Last year they had me eat in the kitchen. Said the dining room was too crowded. But there were empty chairs, Dad. I counted 4 empty chairs." Vincent's jaw tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have done something crazy. And I didn't want to make trouble for Nora." She took a sip. Her sister Deanna was there with her kids, Ashley, Tracy, and little Marco. They got to sit at the main table. Martha and Roy passed around baby pictures, talked about how proud they were of their grandchildren. Plural. But apparently I don't count. "Lana, it's fine. I'm used to it." But her voice cracked slightly. "Deanna's kids there? I don't know, Dad. They look at me like I'm the help or something. And Nora she doesn't say anything. She carves the turkey and laughs at Martha's jokes, and it's like I'm invisible." Vincent reached over and squeezed her shoulder. "You're not going through that again. So we'll skip it? Stay home, just us two. We'll see." That evening, Vincent stood in the kitchen of his modest colonial home, chopping vegetables for dinner. The house was paid off, bought with the settlement money from his years as a wildfire specialist in California, before he'd moved back east and started his construction consulting business. The work was steady, the pay good, but it didn't come with the prestige or pedigree the Waltons valued. Nora arrived home at 7, her heels clicking on the hardwood. She worked as a buyer for a high-end boutique chain, a job her mother had secured through connections. She set her designer bag on the counter and kissed Vincent's cheek, but there was tension in her shoulders. "We need to talk about Thursday," she said. Vincent kept chopping. "Nothing to talk about. Lana's not going back there to be humiliated. My mother apologized for last year. She said it was a misunderstanding. Martha Walton doesn't misunderstand anything. She's calculating." Vincent set down the knife and turned to face his wife. "Your mother called Lana a dirty girl in front of guests, Nora. Your father laughed, and you stood there serving turkey." Nora's face flushed. "It wasn't like that." "Then how was it?" "Mom was talking about Lana's job. She just thinks maybe a young woman should consider other career paths. Something more refined. Your mother thinks Lana isn't good enough because her biological mother was a waitress I met in Sacramento. That's what this is about. Class. Bloodlines. Your family's obsession with pedigree like you're breeding show dogs." Nora's eyes flashed. "That's not fair. My parents have been generous to us." "Generous?" Vincent's voice rose. "They bought you a car and threw it in my face at every family gathering. They paid for that cruise and made sure everyone knew I couldn't afford it myself. Their generosity comes with strings, Nora, and every string is tied around my daughter's throat." "She's not." Nora stopped herself. "She's not what?" "Finish that sentence." "Nothing. I just meant." Nora's composure cracked slightly. "This is hard for me too, Vincent. I'm caught between my family and yours. There's no between. There's right and wrong." Vincent turned back to the cutting board. "Tell your mother we're not coming. Make whatever excuse you want." Nora was silent for a long moment. Then what if I go alone? Vincent's hand stilled on the knife handle. He turned slowly. What did you say? Maybe it's better if I go by myself this year. Keep the peace. We can have our own celebration with Lana on Friday. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Vincent studied his wife's face, the woman he'd married 8 years ago, who'd promised to love Lana as her own, who'd smiled at their wedding as Lana served as junior bridesmaid. Now she was choosing sides, and Lana wasn't on hers. If you walk out that door Thursday without my daughter, Vincent said quietly, don't bother coming back. Nora's eyes widened. You can't be serious. Dead serious. Over one dinner. Over 8 years of one dinner. Over every snide comment, every deliberate slight, every time you chose your mother's approval over my daughter's dignity. Vincent's voice remained calm, controlled. I've watched you become someone I don't recognize, Nora. Someone who can watch a child, any child, eat cold leftovers alone on a porch in November and say nothing. I didn't know about that. You didn't ask. You didn't check on her. You were too busy performing for Martha and Roy and Deanna. He shook his head. I thought you were stronger than them. I was wrong. Nora grabbed her bag and keys. I'm staying at my sister's tonight. We'll talk when you're being rational. She left without another word. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a coffin lid. Vincent stood in the kitchen, listening to Lana's music playing upstairs. She had no idea her stepmother had just chosen the Waltons over her. But she'd find out Thursday, one way or another. He pulled out his phone and opened a note file. Started typing names, relationships, observations. If Nora went to that dinner without them, Vincent needed to know exactly what he was dealing with. The Waltons thought they were untouchable. They thought their money and connections made them immune to consequences. Vincent had dealt with wildfires that destroyed everything in their path. He understood the nature of uncontrolled destruction, but he also understood something the Waltons didn't. The most devastating fires were the ones that started small, unseen, until they'd already consumed everything. He spent the next 3 days preparing, not just for Thanksgiving, for what came after. Wednesday afternoon, Vincent sat in a coffee shop across from Joel Rowe, an old friend from his California days who now worked as a private investigator in Connecticut. Joel slid a manila folder across the table. Your in-laws are interesting people, Joel said, stirring his coffee. Roy Walton made his money in commercial real estate in the 90s. Martha came from old money. Her maiden name was Clark, Connecticut blue bloods going back to colonial times. They've spent the last 30 years making sure everyone remembers both. Vincent opened the folder. Property records, society page, clippings, photographs from charity events. They're overextended, Joel continued. Mortgage to the gills. That Greenwich estate? Third mortgage. Roy's had some bad investments in the past 5 years. They're bleeding money, but keeping up appearances. The Thanksgiving dinner is their biggest social event. Everyone who's anyone gets invited. Judges, politicians, old money families. It's how they maintain status. What about the daughter? Deanna, married to Buddy Cobb, a hedge fund manager. 3 kids like you mentioned. They live in Darien, similarly mortgaged. The whole family's built on credit and connections. Joel pulled out another sheet. But here's what's interesting. Martha serves on the board of the Greenwich Historical Society. Very prestigious. The board vote on new members next month, and Martha's been campaigning hard for the incoming chair position. Vincent studied the documents. She cares about this? More than anything. It's her identity. Chairman of that board means you're officially Greenwich royalty. And if something damaged her reputation before that vote, Joel leaned back, a knowing smile on his face. Then Martha Walton would lose everything that matters to her. Status, position, respect. He paused. What are you planning, Vincent? Just gathering information. Vincent closed the folder. What do I owe you? First one's free. You saved my ass in that Malibu fire. We're even. Joel stood up. But Vincent, whatever you're planning, be careful. The Waltons have powerful friends. So do I, Vincent said, though he wasn't sure that was true anymore. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and gray. Nora hadn't come home. Vincent made breakfast for Lana, pancakes with chocolate chips, her favorite since she was 6. She sat at the kitchen table in her pajamas, scrolling through her phone. Nora texted me. Lana said quietly. She wanted me to understand that family is complicated. Vincent flipped a pancake, saying nothing. She's going to the dinner, isn't she? Yes. Lana nodded slowly. Are you and her? I don't know yet. Vincent plated the pancakes and sat across from her. But I know this. You deserve better than being treated like you're less than. You're not less than anyone, Lana. Not the Waltons. Not their grandchildren. Not anyone. I know, Dad. Do you? Because sometimes I watch you shrink around them, like you're trying to disappear. That's not you. You're smart, capable kind. You work harder than most adults I know. And you're my daughter. That matters. Lana's eyes glistened. So what do we do today? Vincent smiled. We're going to surprise your stepmother. An hour later, Vincent pulled his truck into the circular driveway of the Walton estate in Greenwich. The property sprawled across 3 acres. A colonial revival mansion with white columns and black shutters, surrounded by manicured lawns and bare November trees. Cars lined both sides of the drive. Luxury sedans, a few SUVs, one vintage Bentley. Lana stared at the house. Dad, what are we doing? I need to see something with my own eyes. Vincent cut the engine. Stay here for a minute. He walked to the front door and rang the bell. Through the side lights, he could see motion. Servers in black and white, guests in formal attire milling with cocktails. The door opened, and a young server looked confused. I'm Vincent Copeland, he said. Nora's husband. Oh, I don't think you're on the list. Vincent walked past him into the marble foyer. The house smelled of roasted turkey and expensive perfume. Voices and laughter echoed from the dining room. He moved through the space, nodding at confused guests, until he reached the back of the house. Through the French doors, he saw her. Lana sat alone on the back porch, a plastic plate in her lap, wearing her work jacket against the cold. The plate held what looked like dried-out turkey, cold stuffing, and congealed gravy. No sides, no dessert. She ate mechanically, staring at nothing. Vincent's vision went red at the edges. He turned and walked back toward the dining room. The massive space was set with a table that could seat 30. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier. 23 guests sat at the main table, another 24 at a parallel table. At the head of the main table, Martha Walton held court in a blue Chanel suit, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. Roy Walton sat beside her, laughing at something a judge was saying. Nora stood at the sideboard, carving turkey. Her sister Deanna sat at the table with her husband and 3 children, Ashley, Tracy, and little Marco, all dressed in matching outfits that probably cost more than Vincent's monthly mortgage. They ate from china plates while a server refilled their crystal water glasses. Vincent scanned the room. Empty chairs. He counted 6 of them, scattered among the tables where guests had stepped away or not yet arrived. 6 empty chairs while his daughter ate alone on a cold porch. He walked to the French doors and opened them. Lana, he called. Come here. Lana looked up, her face pale. She saw him, and immediately her eyes filled with tears. Daddy, she whispered, standing. The plastic plate tumbled to the porch floor. Grandma said dirty girls do dirty jobs. She said I couldn't. I know, sweetheart. I know. Vincent held open the door as Lana hurried inside, trembling. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders and walked her into the dining room. The conversations died in waves as guests noticed them. Martha looked up from her plate, her face freezing in artificial surprise. Vincent, Vincent didn't let her finish. He walked straight to the main table, gripped the edge, and with one violent motion, flipped the entire thing forward. The crash was enormous. China shattered. Crystal exploded. Turkey, gravy, cranberry sauce, 3 kinds of potatoes, and green bean casserole flew across the room. Wine and champagne sprayed the walls. Martha screamed as hot gravy splashed across her Chanel suit. Roy jumped back too late, mashed potatoes sliding down his front. Deanna grabbed her children, pulling them away from the avalanche of food. In the sudden, absolute silence that followed, Vincent's voice rang out clear and cold. I want everyone in this room to understand exactly who these people are. Martha and Roy Walton are bigots who've spent 8 years torturing a teenage girl because her mother was a waitress. They invited 47 people to this house today, judges, politicians, society friends, and made my daughter eat cold leftovers on the back porch like a stray dog, while their real grandchildren sat at this table in their matching outfits. He looked at each stunned face. You've been breaking bread with people who emotionally abuse children. I hope it was a good meal. He turned to Nora, who stood frozen with the carving knife still in her hand. You chose them. I want you to remember that. Vincent took Lana's hand and walked toward the door. Not a single guest moved. Not one voice broke the silence. 47 people stood in the wreckage of their Thanksgiving feast, and the only sound was Vincent's boots on the marble and Lana's quiet crying. They got in the truck and drove away. In the rearview mirror, Vincent saw guests beginning to file out of the house, conversations urgent and animated. The story would spread, but that was just the opening move. The real destruction was about to begin. That night, Vincent sat in his study with his laptop, compiling everything Joel had given him with information he'd gathered himself. The Waltons' world was built on perception, on carefully maintained illusions of wealth and class. Vincent was going to dismantle it piece by piece. First, he drafted an email to the Greenwich Historical Society board, attaching photos he'd discreetly taken on his phone. Lana on the porch with her plastic plate, the empty chairs at the main table, the elaborate setup inside. He included a detailed account of the day's events and Martha's treatment of his daughter. He CC'd several local news outlets that covered society events. Second, he called in a favor from a former colleague who worked in property assessment. Within hours, he had documentation showing the Waltons had been underreporting their property value for tax purposes while simultaneously claiming it as a historical treasure to the Greenwich Historical Society. The discrepancy was significant, potentially criminal. Third, he reached out to 3 other families who had distanced themselves from the Waltons over the years. Quiet conversations revealed similar stories. Discriminatory comments, cruel treatment of anyone deemed beneath them, financial improprieties. People had stayed silent to avoid social warfare. Vincent gave them another option, collective testimony. By midnight, he had assembled a case that would destroy Martha Walton's bid for the board chairmanship and potentially trigger investigations into their finances. But he wasn't done. That was just phase 1. The doorbell rang at 1 a.m. Vincent opened it to find Nora standing there, mascara streaked down her face, still in her stained dress. They kicked me out, she said. My own parents threw me out of their house because of what you did. What I did. Vincent's voice was dangerously quiet. You humiliated them in front of everyone. The judge left. The Harrisons left. People were pulling out their phones, taking pictures. My mother was crying. My father was, she stopped, seeing Vincent's expression. Your mother, Vincent said slowly, made my daughter eat cold leftovers on a porch in 40-degree weather while 30 grandchildren sat inside with hot food and crystal glasses. Your mother called her dirty. And you're upset about humiliation? I didn't know she was out there. I was helping with the serving, and you didn't check on her. In 3 hours, you never once looked for my daughter to see if she was okay. Vincent stepped aside. You can sleep in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow, you need to decide who you are. Nora hesitated, then walked past him into the house. As Vincent locked the door, his phone buzzed with an email notification. Joel Rowe had sent more information, this time about Roy Walton's business dealings. Apparently, there were a few former business partners who felt cheated. People who might be interested in discussing their experiences with Roy's creative accounting practices. Vincent forwarded the information to his attorney with a single line, gather statements, prepare for depositions. Then he went upstairs and checked on Lana. She was asleep, but her face was swollen from crying. Vincent sat on the edge of her bed, watching her breathe, and made a silent promise. The Waltons had spent years making his daughter feel worthless. Now, they were going to learn what it felt like to lose everything. The next morning, the story had spread through Greenwich's social circles like wildfire. Vincent's phone rang constantly. Numbers he didn't recognize, reporters asking for comment, even a few guests from the dinner reaching out to express quiet support. He ignored most of them, but he did answer when Joel called. It's working, Joel said. 3 board members of the Historical Society have already said they're reconsidering Martha's nomination. The photos you sent are circulating everywhere. Someone created a hashtag. Hashtag Porch Plate Girl. It's going viral. Good. Vincent, there's something else. One of the guests of the dinner was Cecilia Strickland, writes for the Greenwich Times Society column. She published a piece this morning titled The Ugly Truth Behind Greenwich's Golden Families. It's scathing. Mentions the Waltons by name. Vincent pulled up the article on his laptop. Cecilia hadn't held back. She described the scene in detail, interviewed 3 guests who confirmed the story, and posed questions about how many other prominent families engaged in similar cruelty behind closed doors. The comments section was exploding. The newspaper wants to interview you, Joel continued. And Lana, if she's willing. I'll think about it. Vincent hung up and turned to find Nora standing in the kitchen doorway, still in her clothes from last night. My mother's lawyer called, she said. They're threatening to sue you for property damage and defamation. Let them try. Discovery will be very interesting. Nora sat at the table, looking defeated. This is going to destroy them. They destroyed themselves. I'm just making sure everyone sees it. Vincent, they're my parents. And Lana is my daughter. You chose which relationship mattered more. He poured himself coffee. I filed for divorce this morning. Separation of assets, custody arrangements. Well, Lana's 17, so that's not an issue. You can stay here until you find a place, but we're done. Nora's face crumpled. Just like that? 8 years, and you're throwing it away. I'm not throwing anything away. You did that every time you stood by while they hurt my daughter. Vincent's voice remained steady. I loved you, Nora. I believe you when you said Lana would be your daughter too. But you became them. Maybe you always were. I can change. I'll talk to my parents. I'll make them. It's too late. Vincent set down his mug. I've already started phase 2. Phase 2 began with a phone call to Dean Crane, a local contractor Vincent had known for years. Dean had built additions on several Greenwich estates, including one project for the Waltons that had ended in a bitter dispute over payment. Dean, remember when Roy Walton stiffed you on that sunroom job? $43,000. Took me to court, claimed the work was substandard. I had to settle for half just to end it. How would you feel about talking to the state contractor licensing board about it? I got 2 other contractors with similar stories. Dean was quiet for a moment. What's this about, Vincent? It's about people who think money makes them immune to consequences. I'm listening. By Monday, Vincent had affidavits from 3 contractors detailing Roy's pattern of refusing payment, making false claims, and using his connections to avoid accountability. He submitted them to the state licensing board along with a formal complaint. The investigation would take time, but it would hang over Roy's head, poison his business relationships, create uncertainty. The Historical Society board meeting was Wednesday. Vincent didn't attend, but Joel did, sitting in the public gallery. He texted Vincent updates throughout. Martha showed up in her lawyer's suit, trying to look tough. Board president, just read your email aloud, including the photos. For board members are asking questions. Getting heated. Votes starting. This is not going well for her. The final text came an hour later. Unanimous vote against nomination. Martha walked out crying. Mission accomplished? Not yet, Vincent thought. There was still more to do. That afternoon, he met with a reporter from the Hartford Courant, a legitimate journalist named Gary Shepard who'd been investigating wealth inequality in Connecticut's Gold Coast. Vincent provided him with everything. Financial records showing the Waltons' mortgages and debt, testimonies about their treatment of service workers and contractors, statements from other families about similar experiences. This is bigger than one bad Thanksgiving, Gary said, reviewing the documents. This is about a whole class of people who've insulated themselves from accountability. Write that story, Vincent said. Make it count. The article ran Sunday, front page of the Connecticut section, behind the mansion doors, how Greenwich's elite families treat the working class. The Waltons were the centerpiece, but Gary had expanded it to include patterns across multiple wealthy families. The response was immediate and fierce. Social media exploded. Local politicians issued statements. 3 families named in the article hired crisis PR firms. Martha and Roy's world was collapsing in real time. Tuesday morning, Vincent received a call from an unknown number. When he answered, Roy Walton's voice came through, shaking with rage. "You've destroyed us," Roy said. "We've lost everything. Martha's had a nervous breakdown. Deanna's kids are being bullied at school. Our bank is calling our loans. You happy now?" "Not yet," Vincent said calmly. "But I'm getting there. What more do you want?" "Blood. I want you to understand what you did. For 8 years, you made a child feel worthless. You looked at my daughter and saw someone beneath you, someone who didn't deserve basic human dignity. And you were so confident in your superiority that you never thought there would be consequences." Vincent's voice hardened. "Now, there are. We'll sue. We'll take everything you have. Try it. Discovery will be fun. I've got 17 more people ready to testify about your business practices, your treatment of employees, your tax irregularities. Take me to court, Roy. Please." The line went dead. That evening, Vincent sat with Lana in the living room. She'd been quieter than usual, processing everything that had happened. The story had made national news, not the Waltons specifically, but the broader conversation about class and privilege. Lana's face hadn't been shown, but she knew people were talking about her. "Dad," she said finally, "did you do all this for me?" "Every bit of it. It's a lot. People are losing jobs, reputations. The Waltons might lose their house." Vincent turned to face her fully. "Lana, I need you to understand something. What they did to you wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was deliberate cruelty. They wanted you to feel small so they could feel big. And they would have kept doing it if nobody stopped them." He took her hand. "You're not responsible for their consequences. They are. I know. I never thought I mattered enough for all this. You matter more than anything in this world. Don't ever forget that." Lana leaned against his shoulder. "Nora came by the shop today. She wanted to apologize." Vincent tensed. "What did you say?" "I told her I needed time, that I didn't know if I could forgive her for just standing there." Lana paused. "Is that wrong?" "No, it's honest. Do you think she really didn't know I was out there?" Vincent considered this carefully. "I think she chose not to know, and sometimes that's worse." They sat in silence, watching the fire in the fireplace. Outside, November wind rattled the windows. Vincent's phone buzzed with another update from Joel, a news alert about the state attorney general opening an investigation into property tax fraud among several Greenwich families. The Waltons were mentioned prominently. The dominoes were falling exactly as Vincent had planned. 3 weeks later, Vincent stood in the parking lot of a foreclosure auction, watching as the Walton estate went on the block. The bank had called their loans after the tax fraud investigation revealed they'd been lying about income and property values for years. Roy faced criminal charges. Martha had suffered what the doctors called a stress-induced cardiac event. Not quite a heart attack, but close enough to hospitalize her for a week. The bidding ended at $2.3 million, less than half what the Waltons claimed the property was worth. A developer bought it, planning to tear down the mansion and build modern townhouses. Vincent didn't feel triumphant watching it happen. He felt tired, but he also felt resolved. The Waltons had learned what every bully eventually learns. Someone will always be willing to fight back. Nora had moved back in with Deanna after the divorce was finalized. She tried to reach out to Vincent several times, apologizing, saying she understood now what she'd done. Vincent had been polite but firm. It was too late. The trust was gone. What he didn't tell her was that he'd made sure her name was kept out of most of the coverage. She'd been complicit, yes, but she'd also been a victim of her parents' toxic values. She'd lost her marriage and her illusions about her family. That was punishment enough. The real targets were Roy and Martha, and they'd gotten exactly what they deserved. Christmas arrived with snow and cold. Vincent and Lana spent in their house, just the two of them, eating takeout Chinese food and watching bad movies. Lana had been accepted to 3 colleges, all with full scholarships after her story went public, and several organizations created funds for students from working-class backgrounds. "I'm thinking University of Connecticut," she said, scrolling through acceptance letters on her laptop. "Mechanical engineering program is supposed to be excellent. Whatever you choose, I'm proud of you." "Dad," Lana looked up. "Thank you. For everything. For fighting for me. Always, sweetheart. Always." His phone rang, Joel's number. Vincent answered, stepping into the kitchen. "You're not going to believe this," Joel said. "Roy Walton just got arrested." The investigation found he'd been running a shell company to hide assets. He's looking at federal charges now. Vincent absorbed this information. And Martha? She's cooperating with investigators, apparently turning on Roy to try to save herself. The family's completely fractured. Good. Vincent, you won. Completely. The Waltons are destroyed. Their reputation is garbage. Their money's gone. You can stop now. Vincent looked into the living room where Lana sat, safe and warm, finally free of the people who'd made her feel worthless. I already have stopped. This part's just watching the fire burn out. He hung up and returned to the couch. On TV, a terrible action movie was reaching its climax, explosions and heroic music. Lana laughed at something stupid the hero said, and Vincent smiled. The Waltons had thought their money and connections made them powerful. They'd thought their cruelty would go unpunished because they operated in a world that protected people like them. They'd been wrong. Vincent had learned in California that you don't fight fire with water. You fight it with controlled burns, with strategic planning, with understanding exactly what fuel feeds the flames. The Waltons' fuel had been pride, reputation, and the illusion of superiority. Vincent had burned it all away, and now, sitting in his modest house with his daughter, watching snow fall outside the window, he felt something he hadn't felt in 8 years. Peace. The doorbell rang. Vincent answered it to find a woman in her 50s standing on his porch, wearing a nice coat and carrying a small box. Mr. Copeland? I'm Emma Wall. I was a guest at the Thanksgiving dinner. She looked nervous. I've been trying to work up the courage to come by. I wanted to apologize for not saying anything that day, for not standing up when I should have. Vincent studied her. He remembered her. She'd been at the parallel table, had looked uncomfortable during the dinner. Emma continued, I grew up in Bridgeport, working class. I'm married into Greenwich society, and I've spent 20 years trying to fit in, trying to be accepted by people like the Waltons. I watched what happened to your daughter, and I didn't say a word because I was afraid of being excluded. She held out the box. I baked these for Lana. Cookies. And I wanted to tell you that what you did, calling them out, exposing them, it was brave. More than that, it was right. Vincent took the box. Thank you. I've been thinking a lot since that day. About what kind of person I want to be. About whether acceptance is worth compromising your values. She smiled slightly. You reminded me it's not. After she left, Vincent brought the cookies inside. Lana tried one, chocolate chip, still warm. These are good, she said. Who was that? Someone who's trying to be better. Aren't we all? Vincent sat back down, and they returned to their movie. But something Emma said stayed with him. What you did was right. He'd spent weeks wondering if he'd gone too far, if his revenge had been excessive. The Waltons had lost their home, their reputation, their financial security. Roy faced prison. Martha's health had suffered. But then he remembered Lana on that porch, alone in the cold, believing she deserved it because that's what they'd taught her. He remembered 8 years of subtle cruelties, deliberate exclusions, calculated humiliations. No, he hadn't gone too far. He'd gone exactly far enough. The next morning, Vincent received a registered letter from Martha Walton's attorney. Inside was a single handwritten note. Mr. Copeland, my client wishes to extend her deepest apologies for her treatment of your daughter. She acknowledges the harm caused and takes full responsibility. She does not expect forgiveness, but hopes you will accept this admission of wrongdoing. Vincent read it twice, then put it in a folder with all the other documentation. The apology didn't undo the damage, didn't erase 8 years of pain. But it was acknowledgement, which was more than the Waltons had ever given Lana before. He showed the letter to Lana that evening. She read it silently, her face unreadable. What do you want to do with this? Vincent asked. Nothing. It's too late. But she folded the letter and kept it. Maybe someday it'll mean something. Right now it's just words. Fair enough. January arrived with bitter cold. Vincent's construction business picked up after the holidays. Ironically, he got calls from 3 Greenwich families who wanted to work with the guy who stood up to the Waltons. He accepted the jobs. The work was good and the money was fair. Nora sent Lana a birthday card with a long, apologetic note. Lana read it, cried a little, and put it in her desk drawer. She wasn't ready to respond yet. Maybe she never would be. That was her choice to make. The state attorney general's investigation concluded with charges against Roy for tax fraud and wire fraud. He pleaded guilty to reduced charges and received 18 months in federal prison, 3 years probation, and a $250,000 fine. His business license was permanently revoked. Martha avoided criminal charges by cooperating, but her social standing was obliterated. The Greenwich Historical Society removed her from all committees. Her church asked her to step down from volunteer positions. Former friends stopped returning calls. Deanna divorced Buddy and moved to Massachusetts with the kids, trying to escape the scandal. She sent Vincent a brief email. "I'm sorry for everything. I should have been better." Vincent didn't respond. Some apologies were too late to accept. By March, the story had faded from headlines. Other scandals took its place. But in Greenwich and the surrounding towns, people remembered. They remembered the Thanksgiving dinner, the overturned table, the photos of a teenage girl eating alone on a porch. They remembered that wealth and status couldn't protect you from consequences if someone was willing to fight back. Vincent received letters from strangers, people who'd experienced similar treatment from wealthy employers or family members, people who thanked him for saying what needed to be said. He kept every letter in a box, reading them when he doubted whether his actions had been justified. They had been. Every single one. On a warm April afternoon, Vincent and Lana drove past the old Walton estate. The mansion was gone, demolished. In its place, a construction crew was building 4 modern townhouses. A sign advertised them as luxury residences starting at $850,000. Smaller, but still expensive, Lana observed. Everything's expensive in Greenwich. Do you ever regret what you did? Vincent thought about this. No. Do you wish I hadn't? No. Lana smiled. I wish it hadn't been necessary, but I'm glad you did it. They drove home through spring sunshine, past awakening trees and early flowers. The worst was behind them. Ahead lay college, new opportunities, a life where Lana could be exactly who she was without shame or apology. Vincent had fought a war for his daughter's dignity and won. The casualties were severe, but they were casualties the Waltons had earned through years of cruelty and arrogance. He'd promised to protect Lana, to fight for her, to make sure she knew her worth. He kept that promise, and that was enough. The story ended not with a bang, but with quiet resolution. Vincent rebuilt his life, focused on his work and his daughter. Lana graduated high school with honors, gave a valedictorian speech about standing up to injustice that went viral online, and left for college in August. The Waltons faded into obscurity. Roy served his time in minimum security. Martha became a cautionary tale, a reminder that cruelty, no matter how polished or refined, would eventually cost you everything. Nora remarried eventually to a man from Stanford. She sent occasional updates about her life, always with an underlying sadness about what she'd lost. Vincent wished her well from a distance, but never considered reconciliation. Some bridges once burned stayed burned. Years later, when Lana graduated with her engineering degree and got a job at a major automotive company, she called Vincent from her new apartment in Detroit. "Dad, remember that Thanksgiving? Hard to forget. I was thinking about it today, about how you flipped that table, how you looked at all those people and didn't back down." She paused. "I want you to know it changed my life. Not just stopping the Waltons, but showing me that I was worth fighting for." Vincent felt his throat tighten. "You were always worth it. I know that now, because you made sure I knew it." After they hung up, Vincent sat on his porch with a beer, watching the sun set. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. No mansion estates or social hierarchies here. Just regular people living regular lives. He thought about Martha Walton's letter of apology, about Roy in prison, about the family fractured beyond repair. He thought about the 47 guests who'd watched him flip that table, who'd heard his speech, who'd seen the truth about the people they'd been celebrating. Some of them had changed after that day. Some hadn't, but all of them remembered. And that mattered. Because the worst thing you could do to a bully isn't physical harm or even legal consequences. The worst thing is to strip away their power, their mystique, their ability to make others feel small. Vincent had done that. He'd taken the Waltons' carefully constructed world and torn it down in front of everyone they wanted to impress. He'd shown that their cruelty had consequences, that their money couldn't protect them from the truth. He'd won, not through violence or illegal action, though he'd consider both. He'd won by being smarter, more prepared, and absolutely unwilling to let his daughters suffer one more day of their abuse. The fire had burned out. The ashes had scattered. And in the space where the Waltons' mansion once stood, new life was growing. That was how it was supposed to work. Vincent finished his beer and went inside, checking his phone one last time. A text from Lana, a photo of her at her new job, wearing a company shirt and giving a thumbs up, grinning. He saved the photo and smiled. His daughter was happy, safe, thriving. Everything else was just details. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.